So away we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Wherever you happen to be in the world today, welcome one and all to Coffee Talk. It is time once again for Coffee Talk Live, where we will be having some discussion about what is going on in the world today, taking a look at the news, sharing some clips, having a little bit of dialogue with those of you who are able to join us for the live portion. And if you are listening somewhere else and you wanted to join the live portion, you can find it Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube. That's at Coffee Talk Live and at Prepper University. You can also find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Coffee Talk Chat, and fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. Being joined by two felines today, Dusty laying in the chair behind me, sleeping, and Uncle laying in the doorway again, having a nap. As I get ready to take a look at who is joining us today, I do read through as many of the comments as I reasonably can. So I see Donna Beaver is here and says, remember, thumbs up, like, and share. Please do. Helter is here. Rodney is here. Dragon. Brian, Tuck, Jane is here, Raccoon, and Cyberjack Sr. has joined us thus far today. Been back in, more personal cat news before we jump into the real news here, and Dilo has joined us. Finally got reconnected with Halo House so we can start rolling out the adoptions again. So little girl will probably be first, and then we got to get the kittens serviced, and I've got a couple of others that are available for adoption. And Granny Smith is sick. Granny Smith is pretty sick. I see Sven has joined us, as well as Anarchy, and DA is here. And Dilo warns us he didn't get a notification. Yeah, I'm not surprised. They don't like me. They don't like this channel. They don't like Prepper University or Coffee Talk, and they've been hassling both channels for a long time now. But yeah, Granny Smith is sick. She has blood in her urine, which is either stress or a bladder infection. So we will see what we will see. Hopefully she'll be okay. Poor thing. Because Granny Smith's a sweetheart. As we get ready to jump off into the actual news. And DA says he is in Memphis, or she. I'm not sure if it's male or female. But DA is in Memphis, Tennessee. As we get ready to jump off here. And first story, we'll talk about everyone's new sweetheart. America's sweetheart. She went from cringe to cool in 24 hours. Kamala Harris. New York Post article, Kamala Harris's campaign team is editing news headlines on ads in her favor without the outlet's knowledge. And in the last speech that Biden made, actually, he called out reporters and said they better start reporting things the way that they actually are from his perspective. And Tuck has made it. Says he's in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So there she is, America's sweetheart, everybody. America's sweetheart. Yeah, my wife is right. She doesn't work out every day and have her neck looking like that. She's not that old. But anyway, Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign team has been quietly editing news headlines in Google search ads to make it seem like major news outlets are on her side, according to the reports. The altered headlines appearing on Google ads and paired with a, quote, paid for by Harris for President banner were changed without the news outlet's knowledge, Axios reported Tuesday. Nearly a dozen publishers were swept up in the faux headline campaign, including major companies like The Guardian, Reuters, CBS News, the Associated Press, and PBS. Even smaller publications like North Dakota's W-Day Radio also saw their headlines changed. The ads include link links to real articles from the news outlets, but the headlines and descriptive text have been edited to cast a supportive light on the 59-year-old presidential hopeful. Okay. And here's an example. This is an Associated Press article. The original article, VP Harris Economic Vision, Lower Costs and Higher Wages. And the altered headline, Trump will terminate ACA, Harris will lower health costs. For example, one ad that ran alongside an article from The Guardian shows a headline that reads, VP Harris fights abortion bans, Harris defends repro freedom, and includes supporting text underneath the headline that reads, VP Harris is a champion for reproductive freedom and will stop Trump's abortion bans. I never did understand all the oxymorons and the terminology for abortion. It's not reproductive freedom if you're not reproducing. It's termination freedom. Reproductive freedom is, I want to get pregnant. I want to have a baby. This is the opposite. But, you know, without going too far down that rabbit hole, another linking to NPR story reads, Harris will lower healthcare costs, while with supporting text saying Kamala Harris will lower the cost of high quality, affordable healthcare, Axios reported, so on and so forth. So the White House is manipulating news headlines in Google search engines, which, as I understand it, is a violation of the law, but who's going to enforce it? Who the hell is going to enforce it? Rodney says the deluge of pro-Harris propaganda has been obvious and nauseating, even over here in New Zealand. Incredible. And Jane said she had sketchy skin, too much sun when young. And oh yeah, talking his little side conversation there. Monkey is here. Glad you could make it. My monkey is not here. Monkey is in the other room. Jane said that is a bunch of crap. No one can lower healthcare costs, but notice more hospitals are laying off staff. Dragon says it's always Google. They'll do anything, no matter how shady, for a buck. Cyberjack says it's sterilization freedom. Yeah. And Monkey said that he remembers when NPR was the most neutral. Correct. They were very neutral, and you could rely on them once upon a time. Now they're extremely left. Frighteningly so. But back to what Jane said there, that's a bunch of crap. No one can lower healthcare costs. The reason healthcare costs are so high is because a lot of unnecessary things that they do. One, most people in the medical profession, gonna shock you, they don't know what they're doing. They really do not have a damn clue. Secondly, they don't listen to anyone, which I can kind of understand that, because, you know, they're dealing with a lot of hypochondriacs. How's your pain on a scale from 1 to 10? And the pain level is 2 and they tell you it's 12. You know, people, you can't rely on people to be straight about a lot of that kind of stuff, okay? But just as an example, my own mother-in-law. Now, you all, a lot of you know that my mother-in-law, she had a stroke and she ended up in a nursing home. And I did the video and I did a short showing all the medications. She had like, what, 32, 34 different medications that she was on. Plus she had the you-know-what jab. And all of that stuff can cause a stroke and memory loss and dementia and all of that. And so she ended up in the nursing home, okay? Now, recently, she had another minor stroke and ended up in the hospital. She's in the hospital right now, completely out of it, doesn't know where she was, couldn't remember anything, didn't recognize her daughter, didn't recognize my wife. It was really bad, okay? So she had another mind wipe from this stroke. Do you know they won't test for a stroke? They've done a test for everything else. It's like, listen, I'm not a doctor. I don't claim to be. But based on her behavior, one of two things happened just from my experience. She had another stroke or someone messed up her medication. Those are the two most obvious things that should be checked for first, which means they need to do an MRI. You think they do an MRI? No. They do everything, but they do a CT scan. And I'm like, a CT scan? And I asked my wife, because, my wife was a medic in the Army. Isn't that for like fractures and broken bones and like major blood clots and crap like that? And she was like, yeah, actually, I think that's correct. That's what it's for. So they do a CT scan. They want to check for meningitis. They want to do an infection screen. They want to give her a C virus test. They want to check for all this stuff. And days and days and days go by. She's in there for almost a week. And I think just yesterday they did the actual MRI. And I don't know what the results are yet. How much you want to bet they come back and say she had another stroke? This is why medical costs are so high, because of all the money they waste. All the money that gets wasted, plus they don't really know what they're doing, or they act like they don't know what the hell they're doing. Helter wants us to see the film Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. It says it shows what the media can and will do to push an agenda. And Brian says he's not shocked. I went to a urologist for 3 years, putting me on useless medications, and still I have urinary problems. Now I don't. I guess it went away on its own. And it could be that the medications added to whatever the problem actually was, and then your body just reset when you got off of it. Seriously. Yeah, because the medications are toxic too. And I've talked about that plenty of times because, again, my wife and I both worked together in mental health. We worked in a mental health facility for inpatients, wards of the state, people who were physically and mentally handicapped that were left with the state. And they're on so many psych meds to control their mood swings that they have to go in for a blood test to check their liver levels at least once a month to make sure they haven't reached a toxic level, because it'll kill them. Jane says, you're scaring me, medical people not knowing what they're doing. I heard that some hospital directors and executives are getting bonuses. That seems wrong. And Monkey is reminding us now monkeypox has a case in Sweden, but the thing is there's a drug already available to treat it called T-pox. Not to be fear-mongering. That's okay, Monkey. But yeah, you're better off. Rodney says Big Pharma wants us permanently medicated because most of these medications have a side effect. And then rather than taking you off or changing it or something, they prescribe something else for that side effect. Next thing you know, one pill turns into 8 as you continue on. How do you think she got to that point? And I showed all of her pill bottles. If you remember that video, or if anybody's new and they want to go back and look for it, I did a short, and then I was still frustrated, so I did a whole video on it. And if I remember correctly, it was 32 or 34 different medications. Who takes that many pills? No wonder she had a damn stroke. Tuck says they've dealt with 4 different nursing homes. 3 were horrible. If you count a 5th, they treated my mom well while she recovered from a surgery, but several years later, let several patients die from heat. Die from heat. That's awful. That is awful. But, it's just throwing out my 2 cents there, especially since my wife and I are going through this again now because she's back in the hospital and she's just starting to come around the last couple of days. But before, she was just totally blitzed out of it. Couldn't recognize anybody. Didn't recognize my wife. It was like, do you know who your daughter is? And then she says my wife's name. And then she was like, where is she? And she was like, I don't know. And it's like, I'm your daughter. I'm like, no, you're not. It was weird. And she's just starting to, come back. But that sounds to me like another micro stroke, because it'll cause a mind wipe like that. Or, again, somebody screwed up her meds. And those are the first 2 things you should have looked for. Always look for the obvious. Always look for the obvious first. But no, they don't want to do that. They want to spend thousands and thousands of dollars. They're like, oh, insurance card. Hey, let's blow it up. They wanted to do a spinal tap on her and check her spinal fluid. When are you going to get around to the MRI? It's the first damn thing you should have done. Seriously. Woman looks like she had a stroke, probably had a stroke. You remember the old expression, if it walks like a duck, Swims like a duck, quacks like a duck. It's probably a freaking duck. Unbelievable. As we shift around here, while we're still on the subject, kind of everyone's America's sweetheart, not such a sweetheart after all. News Nation: pro-Palestinian protesters disrupt Harris's campaign after party. So she was at one of her, did that come up yet? Okay, yes, it did. Campaign after party. Kamala Harris went to her fundraiser, cleaned up all of her money from nitwit donors who like to throw money at problems, or they think they're going to gain something from it. Didn't turn out so well because it turned into a full-blown riot. And are they reporting this? Has anyone seen this in the news? Has anyone seen this? Pro-Palestinian protesters clashed with New York City police Wednesday while trying to confront Democratic leaders at an after-party following a campaign event for Vice President Kamala Harris. Shortly after, Mayor Eric Adams and New York City Governor Kathy Hochul endorsed the Harris Waltz ticket. I bet they did. Protesters set off smoke bombs and reportedly caused thousands of dollars worth of damage to the venue's outdoor spaces. The chaos comes less than a week after pro-Palestinian protesters heckled Harris during a rally in Michigan. The outbursts have concerned officials ahead of the Democratic National Convention in Chicago next week. And believe it, when it comes to the actual DNC, no draconian measure will be left unchecked when it comes to maintaining the comfort of those that are inside. I promise you. However, the concern isn't about the protests themselves, especially since there are dozens of protests planned to occur during the DNC, but rather that they will turn violent like they did Wednesday evening. It's Wednesday evening, and here you see some film footage of the riot going on out front there. This is the police. Oh, the ad. Hold on a second while I clear that. The police in the doors trying to push the crowds back and whatever they can do. And all these schmucks wearing schmas who don't even know what the hell they mean. They're putting it on. Oh, I'm supporting Palestine because I've wrapped a scarf around my face, dude. You want to pass the bong? Helter says these kids will realize they wasted their time protesting the Democrats, who are all AI PAC guys, protesting for the interests of a foreign people instead of their own interests. And Tuck says former administrator on trial following 12 deaths at Hollywood Hills nursing home happened after Hurricane Irma. 2017. Note the nursing home is literally next door to a hospital. Well, they all ran off. And, you know, that happened during Hurricane Katrina, too. Nursing homes were abandoned by staff, and those people were left to basically drown. Jane says, why are college students protesting and college presidents quitting? At Harvard University, Penn, Columbia, the college presidents quit. They were probably asked to step down. It's easier than facing the music to just resign instead of being fired or having to go up before a committee and explain their actions because of the protests that never should have gotten that far out of hand in the first place. Keeping in mind that a lot of the people that were on those campuses protesting weren't even from the universities or colleges. They were outside agitators, which is why when that was exposed, the universities and colleges reached out to local law enforcement to come and sweep them away. Because remember, all at once, they started clearing them out all across the country because they couldn't deny it anymore. Yeah, these people aren't even from the college. They shouldn't be on the campuses. We better clean this up before it gets any more embarrassing in the news. Speaking of riots, and we'll jump to the UK real quick. Is Fluke Man in here? I don't know if he is. Dragon said it's domestic terrorism, not a protest. And Fluke Man says, how would you deal with the disorganized healthcare if you're in charge? Also, I think it'll get worse. A couple of years ago, colleges excluded Asians with good SAT scores and accepted black students instead. Yeah. Yeah. And I see you are in here, Fluke Man. You don't have to answer now. The elimination of a lot of unnecessary things would help a lot. A lot of the stuff they do, it doesn't need to be done. And there should be like a triage for the emergency room as well. The emergency room is extremely expensive. It's extremely expensive. Okay. And people go to the emergency room because they're morons and they waste their time. They waste their time. Although it's not nearly as bad here as it is in countries with socialized medicine. I know in the UK or Canada or wherever, if you go to the emergency room, oh man, you're in for it. You think you have a long wait in the US, try doing it in Europe or any socialized medicine country. Forget it. Forget it. But people go to the emergency room for shit they don't even need. Stupid things. They're wasting their time because they're hypochondriacs and they're weak. And that's part of the problem. There ought to be a triage or somebody who does an assessment when you come in who can blow you off if you're going to waste their time. Problem with that, though, is that if they mess up and they turn somebody away who actually needed treatment, then you might have a lawsuit on your hands. And I see H12 has joined us, and Jane says, "Why is Russia building trenches to protect their land due to the war? They pay people $1,600 to $400 if they can dig one. Does that stop invasions?" Not really, but it does slow down land assaults. Keep in mind one of the methods that Russia uses or has used in the past, although we're in a different realm of warfare in the modern era. Russia defeated Napoleon and Russia defeated Germany during World War II by not fighting. They retreated deep into the interior of their country and destroyed everything as they went. So the French and then eventually the Germans traveled through a barren wasteland and got hungry enough that they turned around and left. And Tuck says, in the last few years, there's been nursing school scandals where students were given certification without finishing the courses. Yeah, a lot of them don't know what they're doing. And a lot of them are really bought in and really indoctrinated. And, getting off topics again and back to what we were discussing with my mother-in-law being back in the nursing home. While my wife and I were there checking on her a couple days ago, the nurse comes in. Talk about bought in. Almost all the staff in this hospital are black. Okay, I'll for context. So the nurse is black, and the nurse came in, right? And Jane said, "Did Afghanistan beat Russia in the last war?" No, America did. America kept secretly funding Afghanistan until Russia went bankrupt, and that's why the Berlin Wall came down. But in theory, they won, because just in the same way that Vietnam won against America through a war of attrition. You got to a point where it just wasn't worth it to spend any more money on it. And in that case, the Soviet Union went bankrupt, and now we have Russia instead, which is better, but still not that great either. Russian today is better than the USSR was then. Let's just put it that way. But anyways, so she comes in and she goes, there's a station on the wall. It has the nitride gloves and it has the hand sanitizer and stuff. So she comes in, gets hand sanitizer and puts it on and starts talking to the mother-in-law. Then she goes back and puts hand sanitizer on again. And then she puts on gloves. And she's talking to the mother-in-law, and she's talking about, "Oh, I just love dealing with someone who has chocolate skin." I'm sitting there, and I don't think she saw me because I'm sitting in the chair. My wife is standing there, and then she's like, "Oh, who's this man?" And then my mother-in-law recognized me. She was like, "That's David," and didn't know who anyone else was, but for some reason she always knows who I am. And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm David. I'm her husband." And then she was like, whoa, you have a deep voice. I wasn't expecting that. And it's like, why? Because white people are all whiny and milquetoast. I didn't say that, but that's the first thing that popped into my head. And she said a bunch of other things. And then when we left, even my wife was like, wow, that nurse really bothered me. She's one of those people that's all bought in. I bet she's got a BLM t-shirt on under her smock. And by the time she left, she had put on hand sanitizer 5 times, by the way. Brian says he hates the smell of hand sanitizer. That stuff will make you sick. You're not supposed to use it like that. It's too much. It's way too much. Catch this up. Puck says, did you see the Taliban made in U.S. military parade in Afghanistan? I did see that on a former base with former U.S. equipment, correct? Is that correct? But yeah, she made comments. Oh, that was the other comment. She said something about because she showed a picture from her cell phone to my mother-in-law of her and her husband. And then she says, oh, you're married to a white guy too. And she was like, no. His mother's white, but he's not white. He is a black man. And by the way, I saw the picture. He didn't look black. He looked about as white as I do. Maybe the hair was a little kinkier. You know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about. A true mulatto. Which is fine. Who cares? And then she made a comment about how it's funny how the lighter skinned people always want a dark woman. And I assure you, I'm not with my wife because of what color she is, okay? I wasn't like, ooh, I got to get me a black woman. You know, that her skin color has nothing to do with it. I've dated women from various color palettes, shall we say. I wasn't seeking out someone that color because I wanted to be with a dark woman. And just thinking about the things that she was saying and how bought in she is. But this is the kind of people that your colleges and universities are turning out people. Be very afraid. Be very afraid. And you can blame Dr. Spock. You can blame Dr. Spock. And I'll explain that if anybody doesn't know the reference. That's a whole other can of worms, but we got time. Anyway, we're going to jump to the UK real quick since Fluke Man is here. And I'll show you without the sound. They've arrested over 1,000 people now for looting, arson, and riots in the UK. Okay. And there you go. And if you're down there, you know what's been going on. All of the riots and all of the carryings on and the counter protests and all the rest of it, okay? Now, the terminology here, and this is what's being used in the media by the UK, all right? And by politicians in the UK. They're calling it the UK race riots. Wording is important. Wording is important, all right? Because it's not about what race these people are. It's about the fact that the UK government, the British government, is prioritizing immigrants over natural born citizens. It doesn't matter where they're from. And as I've pointed out, these immigrants are not all from the Middle East. They're not all from Africa. Many of them are from Eastern Europe, and many of them are from Asia as well. Rodney says universities have been leftist indoctrination grounds for decades now. Yeah, really since the hippie movement. But they're calling it race riots officially. Kind of like how, and I've made this analogy, January 6th was called an insurrection all the way up until the footage was revealed of what actually happened that day. And then they reduced it from insurrection to riot. But that's how they're approaching it. How the UK is approaching it. That's the moniker they're going to hang on it because they're the ones writing the history books. Where's V when you need them? Where is V when you need him, ladies and gentlemen? Because I think you need him right now. Anybody got a Guy Fawkes mask to spare? Seriously. As I try to open this next article up, this ties in. It's a Reuters article. UK revisits social media regulation after far right riots. So in Reuters, and Reuters is German, calling it a far right riot. Just as bad and not necessarily true at all, but it's better than calling it a race riot. So there you go. The British government is considering changes to the Online Safety Act designed to regulate social media companies following a week of racist rioting. Oh, see, they did it anyways. Driven by false information online. The act, passed in October but not set to be enforced until early next year, allows the government to fine social media companies up to 10% of global turnover if they are found in breach. At present, companies would only face a fine if they fail to police illegal content, such as incitements to violence of hate speech. Proposed changes could see Ofcom sanction companies if they allow legal but harmful content, such as misinformation, to flourish. And of course, that all depends on who considers what to be misinformation, and putting it on the tech companies to do the policing rather than do it themselves. Puck says third world. Let me see if I can get the comment to work, because now I'm getting weirdness here. Hold on a minute. There we go. Puck worlders are murdering. Hey, that's why people are upset. To be, they have a right to be, among other things. Among the whole welfare state that's been created around it, among being turned into second-class citizens in a country they were born in, many of them. So Britain's recently elected Labour government inherited the legislation from the Conservatives, who spent many months tweaking the bill in an attempt to balance the right to free speech with concerns over online harms. On Friday, pollster YouGov published a survey of more than 2,000 adults, which found that two-thirds, that 66%, believe social media companies should be held responsible for posts inciting criminal behavior. So they polled, and there it is again, you know how I am about this. They polled 2,000 people that they cherry-picked in an online survey that said 66% of them said that online companies should be held accountable. And Helter says, going after social media companies for legal content considered harmful would be like chasing Vodafone because Tommy Robinson has a mobile phone. As usual, it's a where does it end question. Yeah, where it ends is when the UK is like North Korea. Rodney said far right equals anyone who disagrees with the far leftist ideology. The propaganda is obvious to those of us who were taught history in school, as opposed to the revisionist history taught now. And Jane says it's not YouTube and X, all media monitored for hate speech. Yeah, they are. But what they're proposing is a step beyond what we're exposed to with ScrewTube and with Screwbook and all the rest of them. And Puck says France is worse. They're destroying themselves. That's true. And Dragon says seems impossible to police this fairly. Every platform is saturated with hate speech. And Jane said the poll data is suspicious. Yeah, of course it is, because it 2,000, that's a large number for a poll, actually. 2,000, that's more than you usually see. Usually it's 1,000 or less. But it's a way to fleece, to either manipulate social media or fleece them with fines so that they can waste more money. They can waste more money. Which brings us to this. Which brings us to Elon Musk. Because I thought this was interesting. And J.K. Rowling, who's been very vocal over a few years. So Daily Express, Elon Musk and J.K. Rowling could be jailed after Olympic boxer launches a lawsuit, and there they are. That's Khalif again. Khalif again with the gold medal that they pounded their way into. So celebrities including Elon Musk and J.K. Rowling could face prison if found guilty of relaying misogynistic and racist views against Olympic boxing champion Iman Khalif. Her barrister, Nabila Booty, said everything would be done to achieve justice after his 25-year-old client was pilloried for taking part in the women's events in the Paris Games and then winning gold. Tech billionaire Musk and Rowling, the Harry Potter author, are among those who accused Khalif, an Algerian, of being a man. On Wednesday, Khalif filed a lawsuit alleging acts of aggravated cyber harassment. Penalties for those found guilty of such an offense in France include up to 5 years in prison and fines equivalent to 250,000 euro. I think that's euro. The Khalif complaint was filed against X, and an investigation was immediately opened by France's National Center for Combating Online Hate for, quote, cyberbullying based on gender, public insult based on gender, public provocation to discrimination, and public insult based on origin, said a statement from the Paris prosecutor. Here's the problem. I think what they're really looking for, and Puck says there's two kinds of hate speech. One is government approved and the other is not. Yeah. What they're looking for is to settle out of court, because if they go to court, they're not going to make it. They're not going to make it because Khalif is male. Khalif is positive XY chromosome, and Khalif has the equipment to back it up. So if you want to go straight genetics with it, Khalif is male, period. Which is why he was disqualified in the first place. But then France's Paris Committee, or France's Olympic Committee, went ahead and cleared this individual anyways. They went ahead and cleared him anyway because why not? Let's pretend to be progressive while we're having our climate Olympics. Okay? So if push comes to shove, this person doesn't stand a chance in court. Like Elon Musk is even going to go to France. Oh, we have a warrant for Elon Musk's arrest. Yeah, all he has to do is not go to France, right? The warden says, what's the issue? The Olympic boxer isn't a man enough to handle criticism? Good question, warden. No, not when there's a big paycheck involved, not when there's a big payoff. And probably what they're hoping for is that they'll settle out, that Rowling and Musk and whoever else has their name pitched into the hat here will be like, yeah, I don't want to be bothered. I'll settle out. Here's a check. Because if they go to court and it comes down to genetics, Khalif doesn't stand a chance. Furthermore, I read an article the other day from a former sparring partner of Khalif's that said that Khalif is 100% male, that they sparred with them many times, and that they're tired of being forced to bite their tongue on the subject. Jane said men can always beat up always beat up females. That's why the trans man woman against the female in boxing. But yeah, that's what this is boiling down to. I'm pretty sure they're looking for a payout, that they're looking for some hush money. I don't care if this person identifies as such. I don't care that there is a photo that they claim is Khalif when Khalif was 5 looking like a little girl. I don't know if that's this person. And modern photos, Khalif looks like a dude. T-shirt and shorts, walking around, hair uncovered. So, I mean, you tell me. You tell me. But this is bullshit, and I don't see this going anywhere. Again, I think that they're just looking for a payday because they got away with it at the Olympics, and they're going through France for this lawsuit, which is so progressive. That's why their rivers are polluted. That's why they have rat infestations, massive rat infestations. That's why they have food shortages. And you could go on and on. That's why they had power outages due to sabotage. And Puck says it's called a shakedown. Yeah, Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton are experts at that. Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. And Jenny is here. Rodney says Elon Musk told the EU's Thierry Breton to take a step back and literally F your own face, quoting from Tropic Thunder. Yeah, because they threatened him ahead of the Trump interview. They threatened him ahead of the Trump interview like he cares what France thinks. Like he gives a damn about that. And I made the Dr. Spock reference earlier, if anybody caught that. If you wonder where we are, why we are where we are today, you can blame it on Dr. Spock. And he wrote a book on child rearing in the 40s, 1946, I think, Dr. Spock. And he had some radical ideas on parenting right when, at a time in America where women were very vulnerable because there were no men here. They were all overseas invading Europe. They were all drafted. So he wrote this radical book with some really socialist leftist ideas and presented it at a time of vulnerability in the United States where, again, women were forced into the workforce because most women didn't work. They stayed at home. They were forced into the workforce. Men were overseas. A lot of them did not come back. Many of them died fighting in World War II, drafted and killed. And here comes Dr. Spock with his Marxist ideas for raising children. Okay. From that, again, remember the book came out in 1946, I believe, and you can look it up. I pull stuff off the top of my head when I'm thinking about it. From that, you got the beatnik generation, extremely selfish generation of people. The eat, drink, and be merry for tomorrow we die mindset. These are people that used to eat until they were stuffed, make themselves puke so they could eat again. From the beatnik generation, you got hippies. From hippies, you got yuppies. From yuppies, you got the Me Too generation. And from them, you got God knows what we have now. Jane says, didn't Spock say females cannot raise boys without a man? I don't remember. Fluke Man says US and UK won't extradite them. If they did, everyone will know they're all easy targets like fish out of water. It'll cause widespread unrest. Yes, it will. But yeah, we're in the softest generation of like just shiftless, depressed, selfish individuals now that the world has ever known. I hesitate to think where it's going next when these kids are having kids. And we're going to jump to the Tribune and we're going to talk about Governor Healey. Puck says the what is a woman generation. Yeah, no kidding. Tribune News Service, Massachusetts Governor Healey's office spent thousands on high-end hotels with taxpayer-funded credit cards. That is a nice-looking hotel. Oh, all cannons out front and everything. Right on the waterfront. Okay. So Governor Maura Healey's office stayed at 4- and 5-star hotels across the world multiple times last fiscal year, racking up thousands on taxpayer-funded credit cards for swanky digs, according to data provided to the Herald through a public records request. The first-term Democrat has consistently jetted across the country and several times the Atlantic using public funds during her first 2 years in office. Procurement card data maintained by the Office of the Comptroller shows Healey's office tends to stay at high-end hotels during those trips. Multiple expenditures in fiscal year 24 confirmed the governor and her staff stayed in 4-star accommodations and in one instant booked rooms at a historic 5-star hotel in Quebec City with a commanding view of the St. Lawrence River. Oh, that's nice. Jillian Fenimore, Healey's director of communications, said many of the trips the governor or her staff took have offered opportunities to build political or economic ties with other elected officials or business communities. Yeah, my ass. In the case of the trip to Canada, Healey's office charged just under $2,500 in September 2023 to a procurement card for lodging at the Fairmont Le Chateau Frontenac, a luxury hotel that bills itself as the heritage urban resort that tops the list of Quebec City hotels. From the European-style charm of our guest rooms to restorative treatment in the spa, our landmark luxury hotel promises an unforgettable stay, the hotel's website says. Fenimore said Healey traveled to Quebec City for a press conference as part of the 44th Annual New England Governors and Eastern Canadian Premiers Conference. Healey was the 2023 co-chair of the conference. It was the first time in 5 years the conference met in person, and Healey stayed at the Le Chateau Frontenac. Chief of Staff Kate Cook and an executive assistant because that's where the conference held. Okay, that's very convenient. That is very convenient. But, I think they make a lot of this stuff. They make a lot of this stuff up so that they can have an excuse to go out and just stay in hotels and go to fancy restaurants. Like right here, Healey and her staff stayed at the Marriott Le Méridien Visconti, a 4-star hotel that its ownership describes as a luxury escape in Rome. Why is she in Rome? 4 different payments were charged to procurement cards in May that rank among some of the most expensive. The records show the governor's office spent over $14,000 at the hotel during a trip that totaled just over $30,000. And that this is the Massachusetts Tourism Trust Fund, which is the card that's paying for this, is a multi-million-dollar account used to promote tourism in the state and help regional tourism councils. Incredible. Absolutely. Catch up a couple of comments here really quick. And the warden says the new generation is called confused kitty cats. Let's put it that way. And that gets Puck going because he loves those cats. There we are. So more of your Massachusetts tax dollars being wasted luxury. And Raccoon says, like the waiter says while looking at Ferris Bueller, I weep for the future. So true nowadays. No kidding. And Jane says, I agree. Young adults are confused and selfish. Since the 60s, since the mid-50s to 60s, which would be the beatnik generation, which generated the hippies, and then you got your yuppies, and then, like I said, the Me Too generation, unless I skipped somebody. And now I don't know what the hell we got. Rodney says, note the downward spiral generation to generation is mostly concentrated in the West. Our enemies haven't fallen to the same weakness. No, they haven't. And Flukeman says those cannons probably protected coasts from invaders once upon a time. Very likely. As I try to catch up a few here. Or I don't have to catch up. That's all side conversation. Good. Very good. And where are we here? Where are we here? But yeah, the current generation, like I said, I see these kids hunched over, walking with their heads drooping down. They got that lump. They've got that like on the back of their neck, right where my neck is flat. It's like a half a grapefruit right there because their heads are always slumped like this while they look at their phone in their lap. And they got that, what do they call it? That cell phone finger. Have you heard that one? Cell phone finger. It's like right here, it's like bent. I can't even do it. You see how your pinky is straight, but instead of being straight, it's like at an angle. It's bent now. It's got a groove in it from supporting the phone with their finger like this all day. It's the God. They're so dull-witted and selfish and angry. It's frightening. It's frightening. You know what I mean? And these kids are going to raise another generation of ignorant, selfish, angry, poorly educated kids with no common sense, no goals, no experience, not real experiences. It's terrible. It's terrible the direction that we're headed in. And it's going to take something really massive and really drastic to shock our culture out of it. Jane says they put their son in Boy Scouts and swim team. Watch out for the Boy Scouts. If you got them in there now, I'd be really careful. I would be really careful if they're currently in the Scouts. So the Telegraph, we're going to jump back to Europe here really quick. Heat pumps could bring the German economy to its knees. It's about time somebody's admitting it. And there's your heat pump. Anybody got a heat pump? Fluke man, you got a heat pump? These things are worthless. And it's an overpriced piece of shit. It costs 5 times a regular furnace and doesn't freaking work. I know here they're like 15,000 or something. It's insane, and they don't work. Real cold weather, you better have the best insulation that mankind has to offer, or it's not going to work. You'll need like 3 of them on your house. So emissions would come down. Let me read the article here. Emissions would come down. It would create a high-skill, high-wage economy, and it would reboot industry, accelerate productivity, and deliver a boost to growth. That's a lie. That's what they always say. Oh, you're going to create all these great tech jobs. No, won't happen. For years, we've been told that moving to net zero would create hundreds of thousands of jobs, and billions of euros, dollars, and pounds have been thrown at the companies promising to make that happen. Now it turns out that the green jobs are disappearing at an accelerating pace, and the investment in creating them will have been squandered. That's because without all of the extra money thrown at them from the government, they're not sustainable. More of your tax money being wasted. There should be plenty of money to be made from heat pumps, especially in a country such as Germany, where the Greens are part of the coalition government and where a relatively new, well-insulated housing stock makes them more than a match for older gas or oil boilers, and yet it has turned out to be far from easy. According to the German business paper Handelsblatt Stiebel Eltron, one of the country's largest pump manufacturers has this week been forced to announce job losses. The reason: sales have been weaker than expected, despite generous subsidies for homeowners and an $18.6 million, what is that, Mark? Kroner? To support production. The pumps are falling flat, with only 90,000 sold in the first half of this year against an official target of 500,000. The trouble is that, far from an isolated example, shares in the German battery manufacturer Varta are down by 80% so far this year, and there are warnings that the company may not survive after making heavy losses on energy storage unit for hybrid sports cars. The Belgian chemical group Umicore announced a $1.6 billion hit last month as slowing sales of electric vehicles hit its battery material business, and it decided to postpone plans for a battery recycling plant. Those don't recycle easily or cheaply. But bottom line, I mean, the things don't work right. They don't work right, and they're being forced on people. Let me see here. Brian says we need to get rid of social media, reality TV stars, left-wing colleges, and public school if we're going to fix these kids. In order to fix them, it has to be a survival of the fittest scenario. I hate to say it, but something so drastic would have to happen, like a solar EMP wiping out the whole planet and nothing electronic works anymore. And then like 80% of the population dies. I mean, and that sounds awful, but it would have to be something insanely drastic at this point to snap humanity back from where it is. Rodney says heat pump efficiency numbers are calculated in the most favorable ambient temperatures. Everybody I know who has one has a log burner. And I guess Jane's got to go. Puck says, speaking of Germany, WSJ is running another article claiming that the Ukrainians blew up Nord Stream. I've heard a lot of plausible arguments that the CIA did it. Fluke Man says, don't have heat pumps. Have you heard? Think it was Germany. They're going to stack wind farms to make space. It looks like a giant net from a distance. Wow. Yeah. And those don't work either. Yeah, put up more windmills. Waste the landscape with more windmills and more solar panels. They don't work. They don't work. And we've talked about that extensively. Oh, and Dusty's waking up. Hey, Dusty, how you doing, sweetheart? We have talked about that extensively, about how they do not work. I wonder if I can expand this. No. Wrong button. That was my fault, that one. No, I guess I can't share this because we've looked at the, I still have the images from when I did when I talked about energy production in the United States and looked at the maps for energy production and gas plants. I can read it real quick anyways. Natural gas powered electric plants, 1,793 plants, natural gas plants producing 34% of the grid, 400 coal plants generating an additional 30%, so that's 64, 61 nuclear plants producing 20%, that's 84% of the grid, 1,444 hydroelectric plants generating 7% of the grid. That's not very efficient, but that brings us to 91%. 1,000 wind powered plants producing 6%. 1,000 producing 6%. Wow. 6%. And then 1,000, this is the most embarrassing one, 1,721 solar plants producing less than 1% of America's electric grid. And if you want to see those again, I guess I have to email them to myself in order to look at it, because it won't let me show what's on my desktop. But that tells it all. That literally tells it all. More than 1,700 solar plants producing less than 1% of our grid, and they want to put solar plants all over the place. 1,000 wind plants producing roughly 7%, with 400 coal plants producing 30%, with 61 nuclear plants producing 20%. Doesn't make sense. And Brian made a donation to the channel. Thank you, Brian. He says, feel better, Kitty. That's right. Granny Smith is sick. She has blood in her urine, so she probably either has a bladder infection or it could be stress. Stress will do that. Stress will do that to a cat also, especially a female. They'll have blood in their urine or their stool. But yeah, I'm guessing it's a bladder infection, and we're getting her treated. But thank you, Brian. Flukeman says, but the wind farm will be at sea. How are they going to make it stable, especially when it gets bashed by high waves? A lot of the wind farm sea projects have been abandoned because they get crushed. It wouldn't take much. One bad storm and they'd be wrecked, and then you're spending $1 billion repairing them. And man, can you imagine all those poor seabirds? All those poor seabirds. Puck says that wind power is stupid. It's inefficient. Like I said, just like with everything else that they do, the electric car, the heat pump, everything, they're rolling stuff out and forcing us to work with it, and it's not proven. They've never been able to get solar to work right. It's not proven. Make it work first and then roll it out, and then I'll have nothing to say. And Tuck says they'll blame any weather-related windmill damage on ye old climate change. That's true. That is true. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off because we are actually over time, but that's okay. Again, special thanks to Brian for helping the channel out. Always appreciate it. Need all the help I can get with all these kitties here. Thank you, everyone else who was able to join us here today. Again, you are listening to and or watching Coffee Talk, and if you are listening somewhere else and you wanted to join us Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube. So with that, I will go ahead and sign off. Hope you got something out of the conversation, and we will see you again tomorrow. Oh, by the way, I may have to do tomorrow earlier. Because of family business. I nearly forgot. So I know, a little late. I'll put up a post probably on the channel to remind everybody tomorrow.